Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for that introduction. Most of all, thank you for the invitation to come speak with you today and to meet some of you. I'm really enthused about this opportunity because it provides the opportunity for us to communicate with you, to make contact with you, explain what it is that we do and how we do it. And this is a much more efficient and enjoyable way than traveling the province. And although I like to get out and about, this is a great opportunity for us to get to know each other better. So I appreciate that opportunity. What I'm going to talk a bit about today is let me just check the slides here to make sure that this is going. All right. Keep our fingers crossed for the technology to continue working. What I propose to do today is to talk a little bit about what the role of the Ombudsman is, essentially what is an Ombudsman and what does an Ombudsman do, talk about my approach to the role, and then get into how that applies to our work with school boards. Really the goal today is to have you thinking, when you think about our work, I'd like you thinking more about what's in it for me than what am I in for when the Ombudsman gets involved. So let's jump into it. First, allow me to speak a little bit about what the Ontario Ombudsman is, what it does, and how that's relevant to people in leadership in schools. So a little bit of background information. You may know that most Canadian provinces have a provincial ombudsman, and the role of an ombudsman is to be an independent, impartial officer, someone who promotes transparency, accountability, and fairness within the public sector. And this is done by receiving complaints from citizens about public sector bodies, and those are situations in which citizens think they may have been subjected to maladministration or procedural fairness. And if so, what we do is we take those complaints and we work at getting them resolved. And not only resolving those complaints, but trying to prevent future complaints. And so, if we looked at complaints in isolation, we'd miss the opportunity to establish what the root causes are and solve them and prevent them from recurring. So we also look at what we call systemic issues. And I think it's very important for a province or a government to have an ombudsman, because while MPPs do great work and they try and help their constituents, they don't necessarily have the resources or the connections or the ability to solve problems, especially at a systemic level. And then the courts, even if they did look into maladministration or procedural fairness, which they don't really, they're prohibitive in terms of cost and time. They're very slow. So the advantage of having an ombudsman in a province is that the ombudsman is free, independent. We're not part of government. I report to the people of Ontario through the legislature. And so really the Ombudsman Office is meant to fill that gap between what MPPs do for citizens and the court system. So very important to know that we are an office of last resort. We always ask complainants if they've gone through whatever local dispute resolution mechanism is available to them, and we learn about what response they got. If there's a right to appeal a decision, we wait for that process to conclude. And of course, we also have the discretion not to investigate a complaint. And I think you should know that when we receive complaints, we are not advocates for the complainants. We bear in mind what my grandmother used to say: it doesn't matter how thin you make the pancakes, there are always two sides. And so we know that. And while we have an open mind, we are impartial, and we are independent as well. So we're objective, we're neutral. Like we're the referee, we're not in the game. And we also have the discretion not to take a complaint, because not all complaints are valid, and we know that. And one of the things that I want to impress upon you today, and that I'll talk about at length later, is that really I would like you to embrace complaints. I think all organizations should embrace complaints. They're a great source of feedback, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. So we operate under authority in the Ombudsman Act. It gives us strong powers of investigations, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But really, I can tell you that most of our complaints, most of the work that we do is resolving those complaints, and they're resolved without any formal investigation, probably upwards of 90%. So just under the Ombudsman Act, we have a broad scope to reach opinions about a public sector's body's conduct, including that it was based on a rule of law or provision that was unreasonable, unjust, oppressive, or improperly discriminatory. So we look at the setup, we look at the administration, the framework for that administration, and we look to see whether it's working well. We typically don't get involved in policy decisions, but once a policy is decided or a program is set up, we look at how it functions within the public sector. So we've been doing that for 40 years, since the office was established in 1975. We've been doing that in the context of the provincial government. But as you know, since last year, our jurisdiction has expanded, and we've gone from roughly 500 public sector bodies. We used to have the provincial government and tribunals and those types of things. But now with school boards, universities, and the 444 municipalities in Ontario, the public sector bodies that we oversee has gone basically doubled from 500 to about 1,000. And that includes the 72 school boards and 10 school authorities. And so, as I said earlier, we receive complaints from citizens. Sometimes we get complaints from MPs, but we can investigate an issue on our own motion. If we hear about something in the media or something comes up in the legislature, we have the authority to look into those matters. And as was alluded to earlier, the vast majority of our recommendations are accepted. You know, I don't have the power to order anybody to accept the recommendations, and people ask me, well, you have no power, then how do you get the recommendations accepted? And I say our power is in our voice. And the way we operate is that we compile irrefutable evidence, we tell very compelling stories, we're fair and balanced in our analysis of the evidence that we review. We walk the talk of procedural fairness, meaning that when we investigate something, when we deal with a public sector body, we are fair in our approach. We give notice of what we're looking into. We explain why. That public sector body has ample opportunity to provide input to us, to our investigative process. We work collaboratively in finding solutions. We run by the organization any potential recommendations we want to make. And there's chance for feedback. We share our findings, and there's chance for feedback before anything is reported publicly. And at the end of the day, we make feasible, sensible recommendations for positive change. And so when you've done that and approached it in that fashion, public sector bodies are hard-pressed not to accept our recommendations. And of course, a lot of the issues that we investigate are not new to the organizations. You know, we're not discovering something that the organizations don't know. But what we do is shine a light on it and bring attention to that problem. And I've had various ministers or commissioners or people responsible for various public sector bodies at the end of the day say, thank you for shining a light on that, because I wanted to fix that problem, but I couldn't get the resources. There was no political will to solve it. And when an ombudsman shines a light on that problem of administration or a lack of procedural fairness, it creates a public knowledge of that situation, and all of a sudden the cupboard's open, resources are found, and there's a political will to address that problem. So again, we focus on administrative conduct and procedural fairness that involves any decision or recommendation made or any act done or omitted in the course of the administration of a public sector body and affecting any person or body of persons in his/her personal capacity. So again, we're impartial, we don't advocate for the complainants, and really what we're going to do is we're either going to validate the work that was done, we're going to validate the processes, validate the work that was done by that public sector body, or through a collaborative process, we're going to recommend constructive feedback that hopefully will prevent complaints from recurring. Solve that problem, but prevent future complaints. So with that, going in with an open mind, we talk to all the people that we need to talk to. We're very careful to get all the relevant evidence. And depending on what the evidence reveals to us, we'll either make recommendations or we'll tell the complainant that they were well served and that everything's working well. So you can understand that this works best as a collaborative process rather than an adversarial one. So a little bit about the volume. We're very busy. We receive more than 20,000 complaints in a given year. And about 1,000 were about school boards last year. I think the number's up to about 1,205 as of today. And the vast majority of these investigations do not, or the complaints rather, do not result in formal investigations. In fact, we only resort to a formal investigation where there's a systemic issue or where we're unable to resolve things informally. For example, if a public sector body doesn't cooperate with us, they don't want to play ball, they don't want to work this out, then we'll do a formal investigation. But that is a very rare occurrence indeed. So in terms of impartiality, when we say resolve complaints, again, it doesn't mean that the complainant is necessarily satisfied. It means that we've looked into it thoroughly and we've satisfied ourselves that either there's good administration there, that procedural fairness was afforded, or that steps need to be taken to address the situation. So a lot of shuttle diplomacy is involved. And again, I'll repeat it, that when we promote procedural fairness, we have to walk the talk of fairness. So we give notice about what we're looking into. We give ample opportunity for discussion and for input and feedback, and we explain our conclusions. We give a heads up about what we've found before anything is reported publicly. And there's also a chance to comment on any recommendations we may make. And so what drives us? What do we stand for? Well, we sat down shortly after I was appointed, the management team and I, we had a retreat and we sat down and said, let's figure out what we're all about. Let's come up with a values statement. Let's come up with a mission statement and a vision statement. And so this is it. It's nothing new, but it was a clear enunciation of what we stand for. So these are our values: fair treatment, accountable administration, independence and impartiality, and achieving real change through getting results. This is what we stand for. And of course, our mission is we strive to be an agent of positive change by promoting fairness, accountability, transparency in the public sector. So this is how we put those values into action. And I have to say we're very proactive in doing this. A lot of our work is done behind the scenes. We don't just affect positive change by having investigations and issuing reports. A lot of that is done behind the scenes. We meet regularly with a lot of public sector bodies, whether it's provincial departments, various government organizations, especially the ones that we hear a lot about. And we work with them. And some departments of the provincial government, we have quarterly meetings. And we say, here's what we're hearing. Here are the latest statistics. These are the issues that are coming to our attention. We are uniquely placed in Ontario to do that, to provide that kind of, because everybody knows about well, not everybody, but a lot of people know about the Ombudsman's office. A lot of people come to us, over 20,000 a year, and they bring us information that we can then impart. And it's, as the head of the public service once said, you're very valuable to the government as a canary in the coal mine. There's that early warning system. And we can actually affect change in that way by giving heads up, and sometimes that affects policy changes really behind the scenes and without having to issue reports. And so when we do that work, what we're really striving for is our vision. We're striving for a public sector that serves citizens in a way that is fair, accountable, and transparent. So that's the end state, and these are the values and aspirations that guide us. So that's it for the background. That's it about what the Ombudsman does and how the Ombudsman operates. But what's in it for you? What should you expect if a complaint is received about a school board or about a school or about personnel? How's this going to work? And that's what I'm going to talk about for the rest of my talk this morning. First of all, let me say that, again, complaints should be embraced. They're your best source of feedback. Successful organizations, professional organizations, know that embracing complaints allows them to develop better systems, to get more buy-in from their stakeholders, and really it affects the bottom line. One thing I think we know as human beings is that human nature dictates that if people think an organization is not going to treat them fairly, they're not going to fully engage with that organization. They're not going to fully follow the rules. They're not going to accept the decisions of that organization. And the opposite is true as well. If an organization is seen to put a priority on fairness and good administration and giving people a fair shake, then people will really buy in. Stakeholders will buy in with that organization. And then that saves time, energy, and money. So those are resources that have to be thrown at situations in which people don't engage with the organization. So really, I see complaints as an opportunity to strengthen relationships, and the Ombudsman is a facilitator in that regard, the bridge, if you will, between stakeholders. And even unfounded complaints can provide you with an opportunity to communicate and build relationships with stakeholders. And as always, when we get involved, the objective is to solve complaints, resolve issues at the lowest level possible as quickly as possible. And so we're organized accordingly. So once we gained jurisdiction over school boards, one of the first things we did was, at a practical level, was to implement a dedicated school board team of early resolution officers, investigators, legal counsel, and senior management. With this new jurisdiction, we felt that it was important to have staff that develop a specialty in this area. And leading up to our jurisdiction, the dedicated staff received training, and that training is ongoing with school board people and on school board matters. And so school board complaints are flagged to this dedicated team on a daily basis, and it's through these flags that assignments are determined and consultation ensues in terms of determining what the next steps should be. We also keep the whole team informed, as well as staff at large, regarding trends observed and statistics in general. So we have weekly meetings to discuss these issues to make sure that everybody's up to speed. And we discuss how to handle compelling cases. And it also allows us to target our outreach and know where we need to engage with stakeholders to a greater degree. I just realized that was a recorder. So again, we triage these files to make sure they move forward in an efficient manner, and we conduct extensive outreach with trustees, parents, councils, teachers, support staff, and other school board officials to inform them of our role, and we ask for suggestions on how we can better work together. So really building relationships is an essential part of what we do. Now, in terms of process, as you can imagine, our complaints are triaged, and serious and urgent matters receive priority. The vast majority of complaints are handled by the early resolutions team. We currently have 30 EROs and 4 managers and a director. And the early resolution officers use alternative conflict resolution strategies to resolve complaints. So first, they'll contact the individual who has complained, conduct a detailed intake. Our intake calls are audio recorded and saved to our case management system, which also assists to ensure that we retain accurate and complete information. And then we review that information, analyze it, consult with a team-based approach. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we have the discretion not to investigate certain circumstances. For example, if the complaint is frivolous or vexatious or not made in good faith, or if the initial review does not reveal a problem, if there appears to be another remedy available, or if there has been a significant passage of time since the decision or conduct complained about, or we're unable for some reason to deal with the matter effectively. So many complaints are closed without contacting the organization itself. We make that determination up front. And since we are an office of last resort, many cases are resolved by referring individuals to internal complaint and appeal mechanisms. Sometimes, though, we have to make inquiries to obtain relevant facts and documents before we close the matter if we consider it resolved. So we're still learning about individual school boards, and they are learning about us. So we're conducting more inquiries at this time. Of course, we operate confidentially, so we obtain consents from complainants, so we document that in our file. We do not provide consent in writing before making the inquiry, but it can be produced if there's an issue. And if we're unable to resolve the matter at a low level, then we have a few options. We can escalate the case up the hierarchy of the organization we're dealing with, and this may involve one or more meetings with various officials. But if the issue remains unresolved, we may launch a formal investigation. But I said earlier, only a small fraction of cases are dealt with through a formal investigation. And in the case of school boards, we've had only one formal investigation, a formal systemic investigation, launched since our oversight began. I'll talk about that more in a moment. So really, we rely on your cooperation to resolve these matters effectively. Resolving complaints can be done more satisfactorily, more effectively, and more efficiently if it's a collaborative process rather than an adversarial one. We don't often deal with principals or vice principals directly. We deal with the superintendent, with the school boards, unless the school board, the superintendent directs us to communicate with principal or vice principal. But hopefully this will allow you to understand what's going on and what the process is when we are involved with the board. So we set target dates and deadlines depending on the urgency of a case. And if there are delays, or there are going to be delays in the provision of information, it's important to let us know. And remember always that this exercise can actually be in your interest. This can resolve issues that may have been long-standing, and may get attention to the problem that you've wanted to have solved and create that will to dedicate resources to it. So to date, I just changed that number because the stats are up today. So we've received 1,205 school board cases, and over 90% have been closed as of January 27th. There are less than 100 ongoing, and only one formal investigation has been launched. As usual, in many cases, in most cases, the matter was resolved after a quick inquiry. The largest number of cases relate to English language school boards. That's probably not surprising because they serve the most people. The next are the English Catholic boards. The French public has 14, and the Catholic board has 25 complaints each. And we have received a number of complaints where the board in question was not specified or has not yet been clarified. The most common complaint topics in 2015 or 2016 were about staff and trustee conduct, special education, transportation, enrollment and boundary issues, employment issues, and student safety. Of course, we don't get involved with employment issues. We work with stakeholders, parents, staff, trustees, administrators, etc., to resolve these issues at the lowest level possible. And again, the goal is to resolve problems or complaints so they don't recur. This is just a highlight of what I've said. So, as in our work with all public sector bodies, we really encourage local accountability mechanisms, whether it's the province, school boards, universities, and if there is a local complaint mechanism, we will always refer the complainant there first. And as I said, we don't investigate every complaint. And so this is really to underscore our value to stakeholders. You know, you are a key stakeholder group in our new jurisdiction, and really we are uniquely positioned to help you with administrative issues affecting the public because we have decades of experience in hearing public complaints and expertise in gathering and analyzing evidence on how government bodies work. So really what I'm looking for is win-win situations. Whenever we can get a complaint that's resolved, and the complainant is satisfied, the public sector body has information upon which to improve its systems, those are win-win situations. So I'll give you a few examples of the work we do to illustrate what I'm talking about. In two unrelated incidents, two 4-year-old boys were dropped off at the wrong school bus stops. One boy was missing for 40 minutes. During that time, his sister rushed to the school to report her brother missing. The secretary contacted the bus company, and the woman that found the boy by the side of the road returned him to school. Although a policy requiring a family member to ask for their child at their school bus stops was introduced this year, the driver failed to follow the new protocol when the child decided to get off at a stop with his friend. After the mother called the bus operator to complain, they apologized for the error, provided an explanation for the mistake. So as a result of this, the general manager of the Transportation Consortium decided to improve reporting incidents of this nature with better record keeping and note-taking on disciplinary meetings. And the consortium is looking at improving their school bus driver training for next year. And there have been no further incidents in this region that we are aware of. In another case, a parent complained to our office after a school board decided to move their child's bus stop 300 meters to a busier intersection. What we did in that case was review the board's transportation policy and make inquiries about the steps that the board took to assess the safety of the new bus stop. The complaint was closed once it was confirmed that the board had conducted a site visit to the stop and had responded to all of the parents' concerns. So in that case, that's an example of validating what work the board had done. We were satisfied that it did everything that was reasonably expected of the board in that case, and we closed the complaint. So another example of really some of the challenging situations that school boards face and the type of complaint that we get involved the parents of an 11-year-old boy with severe life-threatening allergies to peanuts, tree nuts, and dairy, who had previously suffered anaphylactic shock from touching a doorknob at school. The parents did not understand why the board would agree to make the school a nut-free environment, but not a dairy-free environment. So we made inquiries and discovered that the board had accommodated the child with the allergies to the best of its abilities and in accordance with the policies and procedures in place, including ensuring that the student eats at his own desk and that all items have product labels on them so that the school can monitor the ingredients. And so, as I said earlier, we've only conducted one systemic investigation so far in the jurisdictional area of school boards, and that involves busing. That was a result of the shortage of school bus drivers when school recommenced in September of 2016. So when this investigation was announced, we had already received 49 complaints about various student transportation issues related to school buses. Both school boards received formal notice before we announced our investigation. This involved the Toronto District and the Toronto Catholic District. So the matter involves, as you all know, some 60 school bus routes that lack drivers, who are contracted through a transportation consortium shared by the boards. Among the questions investigators are reviewing are whether the boards adequately prepared for and informed parents about the situation, or really even whether they were able to adequately prepare, because information and the timing of information is crucial to this investigation. And so now we've received more than 100 complaints related to this investigation. Because it's an ongoing investigation, I can't provide many details, except to say that the team of investigators are reviewing pertinent documents and conducting interviews. Of course, we continue to resolve individual complaints about this issue as the investigation continues. So from day one, I've emphasized the importance of building relationships with stakeholders, and that means you, who are responsible for the administration of the bodies that we oversee, as well as members of the public who complain to us, and Ontarians at large. Relationships are at the heart of what an ombudsman does, so it's essential that we build trust and credibility with all stakeholders. If stakeholders on all sides understand that the ombudsman will act fairly and work collaboratively with us, we can come up with solutions. We can come up with the most effective solutions to administrative problems together. That will build better systems. It will enhance public confidence, reduce complaints, require fewer resources to deal with those complaints. As I said earlier, time, energy, and money are valuable resources that we have too little of. And so that's what's in it for you. At the end of the day, stakeholders that are more satisfied, more engaged, and more supportive of your actions and decisions. So in future, if you have any comments or suggestions, I invite you to contact us. I'd like to keep the lines of communication open with all stakeholders. We're very easy to reach. I encourage you to stay in touch with us, follow us on social media, Twitter, our website, LinkedIn, Facebook. We're out there in the electronic universe, and we do our best to keep you informed about the issues that we're dealing with. We have some promotional information at the back, so feel free to help yourself to that. And again, I want to thank you for this invitation. Thank you for your attention.